You married in. You'll leave with nothing. That's what my husband's brother said to me across the lawyer's table, loud enough for the whole room to hear, and I just smiled and folded my hands, because I knew something he didn't. Here's a truth it took me 68 years to learn. Grief doesn't show you who your family is. Money does. I remember I was holding a paper coffee cup when he said it, and I didn't crush it, didn't set it down hard, and didn't do any of the yorings a person does when they're about to make a scene. I just put it down on the table very gently, the way you'd set down something that was still full, and I let my hands rest in my lap. Still. Because the second the wound lands, you learn a lot about yourself by what your body decides to do. My name is Eleanor. I'm 68 years old, and I live in a town called Coldwater in Michigan, in a house with a porch that faces east so I get the morning light. I have an old beagle named Biscuit who is 14 and completely unbothered by everything. Thunderstorms, doorbells, the vacuum, and the end of the world. He just sighs and rolls over. I keep bees, 3 hives out past the garden, and I drive a 1994 Ford pickup with a cassette player that still works, which my late husband Walter refused to let me replace. Walter and I were married 41 years. We never had children of our own. That's a long story with a lot of quiet in it. So his family became my family, his brother Ray, Ray's wife, their kids. I made 41 years of Thanksgiving dinners for those people. Now here's the part I want you to understand about me, because Ray never bothered to. For most of those 41 years, I was the quiet one, the one who cleared the plates, the one nobody asked what she thought about the election or the price of feed or anything at all. When Walter and Ray talked business, and Walter and Ray were partners in a small equipment rental company for 30 years, I was assumed to be in the kitchen, and mostly I was, and that suited everyone fine. Ray used to call me Wally's little wife even when I was 60. He thought it was affectionate. It was not affectionate. What Ray never knew, what he never once thought to ask in 4 decades, was that before I married Walter, I spent 9 years as a paralegal in an estate and probate law office in Grand Rapids. 9 years of reading wills, 9 years watching families come apart in a lawyer's conference room over a lake house and a set of silverware. I know how these things work. I knew the language. I just never had a reason to use it because I never wanted to. I wanted a quiet life on a porch with bees and a lazy dog, and I got it. For 41 years, I got it. Then Walter got sick. Let me slow down here, because this is where it started, and it started small. It always starts small. About a year before Walter passed, Ray started coming around more, which at first I thought was kindness. His brother was dying, of course he'd come, but he never came to sit with Walter. He came to sit with the paperwork. He'd ask Walter about the business, about the property, about how things were structured, while Walter was half asleep on morphine. He brought a man once introduced as just a friend, who turned out to be a financial advisor. I noticed. I noticed a lot more than people give me credit for. That's been the story of my whole life. 11 days before Walter died, Ray sat at my kitchen table, and told me gently, like he was doing me a favor, that when the time comes, it would be simplest if I let him handle everything. He said I was emotional. He said Walter would have wanted family looking after the business, and that I was, and I'm quoting him, family by marriage, but not really blood. You know how it is. 11 days before I lost my husband of 41 years, his brother was already measuring the house for himself. I didn't argue. I poured him more coffee. That was my mistake, letting him think the quiet meant agreement. Or, no, it wasn't a mistake. It was the last kindness I had left in me, and he spent it. That was his mistake. Here's the part people always want to understand, the part they write to me about. Why didn't I say something sooner? Why did I let him talk to me like that at the funeral, and at the house afterward, and finally at the lawyer's office, where he said that thing about leaving with nothing? Why did I just smile? Because I already knew what was in the will. And Ray didn't. Stay with me here, because this is where it gets interesting. Walter, God rest him, was a simple man in most things, but not a foolish one. 2 years before he died, before he was sick, when his mind was sharp as a tack, he and I sat down with our own attorney, a woman named Priya in the next county over, and we put everything in order. Not because we distrusted Ray, not then. Because that's what you do when you've watched, as I had, so many families destroyed by not doing it. The house was in a living trust, in my name as successor trustee. Walter's share of the business had a buy-sell agreement attached to it that Ray himself had signed 20 years earlier and clearly forgotten, an agreement that gave the surviving spouse, me, the right to be bought out at fair market value in cash on a fixed schedule. And Walter's personal accounts, the ones Ray assumed were the estate, were payable on death, to me, directly. They never entered the estate at all. Ray had spent a year circling something that was never on the table. So we come to the reading. It didn't have to be a formal reading anymore. That's an old-fashioned thing, mostly. But Ray demanded one, insisted on it, I think, because he wanted an audience for his triumph. He wanted the family there to watch him take charge. He wore a suit. He brought a legal pad. And when Priya began to explain the trust, and Ray realized slowly, in real time, that the house was not the estate's to give, he stood up and pointed at me and said it. You're married in. You'll leave with nothing. And I smiled, and I put down my coffee cup, and I said, Ray, I think you should sit down and let her finish. That was all. I did not raise my voice. I did not throw his 41 years of insults back in his face. Though Lord knows I had them all cataloged. I did not smooth it over either, and understand that was the hard part. My whole life, my instinct in that moment would have been to make it comfortable for everyone. To say, now, we're all grieving. To be the good little wife who kept the peace. I didn't. I sat still and I let Priya keep reading. And I let Ray hear, word by word in front of his wife and his children, exactly how wrong he had been about everything. For exactly as long as it took. It wasn't revenge. It was arithmetic. Not the hot kind of anger that makes you slam doors. The cold kind, the kind that just lets the truth do the work while you sit with your hands folded now. Let me tell you 2 things I learned in that conference room, and in the 9 years before it, because if you take nothing else from an old woman on a porch, take these. The first is about people, and it has a name. Psychologists call it the disinhibition of entitlement. The way a person who believes something is owed to them will show you their true face the moment they think they're about to collect. Ray was, I'm sure, a perfectly ordinary man most of his life. Grief didn't turn him cruel. Money didn't turn him cruel. They just switched on a light in a room that had been dark, and I finally got to see what had always been standing there. That's not a tragedy. That's information. Painful but informative, the second is practical, and I want the widows and widowers listening to hear me clearly. A will is not the only document that matters, and often it's not even the important one. Assets held in a properly funded living trust do not go through probate. They pass outside it, privately, immediately, to whoever the trust names. Accounts with a named beneficiary, payable on death or transfer on death, do the same. Ray spent a year strategizing about a will and never once imagined that most of what mattered would never touch a will at all. If you love someone, don't leave them a will and a mess. Leave them a plan. Go see a Priya of your own. It cost less than one bad Thanksgiving. The aftermath was quieter than you'd think and sadder. Ray tried for about a week to make noise. He called a lawyer of his own. The lawyer, I imagine, explained to him what Priya had already explained to all of us, that the buy-sell agreement bearing his own signature was airtight, that the trust was valid, and that there was nothing to contest and no ground to stand on. The buyout of Walter's business share went through on the schedule Walter had set. I got what was mine, in cash, over 18 months, exactly as my husband had wanted. Ray got the business he'd always really wanted, free of his brother, and he got to sit with the knowledge that his last words to his brother's widow had been a threat he couldn't back up. His wife didn't speak to him for a month. She told me that herself. His daughter stopped coming to his house. The apology came 7 weeks later. By text, of course by text. Sorry things got heated at the reading, no hard feelings, I hope. 12 words. I read it twice. 41 years, one funeral, and one cruelty in front of the whole family, and I got 12 words with a period at the end. I didn't answer it. Not out of spite. I just didn't have 12 words in me that would have been honest and kind at the same time, and I've made it a rule at my age not to send the dishonest kind. I'll tell you who I did answer. Ray's daughter, my niece Hannah, was the one person in that room who, when her father pointed at me, looked down at the table, ashamed. Hannah's 26, and she'd been the only one of the whole clan who came to sit with Walter at the end, who read to him, and who held my hand at the graveside without being asked. A week after the reading, she showed up on my porch with a pie she'd clearly bought and pretended to bake, and she cried, and she said she was sorry for her father, and I told her a child is never responsible for the account her parents run up. Hannah's back in school now, studying to be a nurse. And what nobody knows, what I've never told Ray and never will, is that a good part of what Walter left is going to sit quietly in an account until Hannah finishes her degree, and then it's hers. Walter would have wanted that. He always said she was the only one of them who came by for the company and not the coffee. There were nights, I'll admit, after the reading, when I lay awake wondering if I'd been too cold. If a warmer woman would have stood up, hugged Ray, forgiven it all right there in the conference room, and salvaged some kind of family. I turned it over more than once. But here's where I always landed. I didn't do a single cruel thing. I didn't take anything that wasn't mine, didn't say a word that wasn't true, and didn't raise my voice or lift a hand. All I did was refuse to make my own disrespect comfortable for the man handing it out. And if that's cold, then I've misunderstood the word my whole life. So here's what I want you to do with this. Whoever you are, however they've made you feel small, being underestimated is not the insult people think it is. It's a gift, if you're patient. For 41 years, Ray thought I was the quiet one in the kitchen, and because he never once looked closer, he never learned the one fact that would have changed how he spoke to me. Let them underestimate you. Just make sure that when it matters, you know exactly where you stand. On paper, in the law, in the plain facts, so that you never have to shout. The truth, said once, calmly, at the right table, is louder than any scene you could ever make. It's morning now, as I tell you this. The light's coming across the porch the way it does, and Biscuit is asleep on the top step, unbothered by everything, as usual. There's coffee going, and the bees are already working. I'm not angry anymore. I don't think I ever really was. Not the hot way. I just wanted what was mine and my due of respect, and I got both, not by becoming someone harder, but by finally, at 68, letting myself be exactly as strong as I'd always quietly been. I married in, and I'll leave when the good Lord decides with everything that ever mattered. Ray just never knew how to count it.